Alright, so here we go. We are going to try and explain how to get in the MyCloudPR4100 NAS drive that has a blue blinking light and it won't show up in the network. Now, I came across this last couple days ago that my NAS drive was no longer showing up in the network. I didn't know what the problem was. I noticed that the network settings and the in the network settings on Windows 11 and my drive and my app all said that the drive was not connected. I could log in to the Western Digital website, but I could not access my drive. When I came to look at my drive, I found the power was on, the fan was running, and the light was blinking blue. And also in that process, I tried everything. I tried the 4-second reset. I tried the 40-second reset, and various other things to see if I could get my drive running. Nothing seemed to work. I couldn't even get to this screen where you log in, just because it had no IP address. So this wasn't connecting. I looked on my router. I noticed that there were several different things in the course of investigating that were wrong. One, I noticed that there was a recent update to Windows 11, and on top of that, there was a notification. There was a recent dated on the Western Digital. There was a recent dated update to the PR4100. Now, if you go online for various videos for fixing this situation, there's a lot of people on Reddit and various other locations that say, the Western Digital site, that say the same problem. Their light is blinking. They can't hard reset it. They can't do the 4-second reset. They can't do the 40-second reset. And they just couldn't, even powering it off and powering it back on, it did not work. It looked like the bricked, when I say brick, that everything had failed. Now, it's my understanding when this happens that doesn't mean your drives are bad. There's other ways you can recreate your RAID drives. Technically was beyond my education in hard drives, but there are ways you can get a software, recreate the drives, and then access the RAID array of data on the drives. There's various, albeit poor, instructions on how to do this through YouTube and various other locations. Now, I was able to get back access to my drive, and I learned a few things in that process. The first thing that I did was, and I can't show you, but the NAS 4100, PR4100 has it has some memory chips in it. And let me see if I can show you what without having to post a picture. I'll show you what the type of memory. In my case, I had InnoDisk 2 GB DDR3L 1600 SO can't tell if that's an S or an 8. SODIMM M36W DDR. All right, well, there was various ways to write this. In a minute, I'll show you what I actually bought. These are the existing, there's two 2 GB slots inside on the motherboard of RAM memory. They're fairly easy to replace, and you can turn the power off and replace this, upgrade the RAM up to 4 GB RAM chips. I bought two 8 GB, I'm sorry, of the same type of memory online on Amazon for about $15. Got it the next day, upgrade the memory. And that may or may not have helped. Several people suggested that online. I'll show you what these look like. This is a pretty close, I don't know if this is the exact one, but this is what they look like. This picture makes it look bigger than it really is. It's about maybe half of the size of this in reality. What they are is laptop RAM memory for the what is basically a motherboard inside your PR4100. There's two of them. They're attached to the motherboard. I would recommend that you turn all the power off to the unit, unplug everything. There's 3 screws on the back. The top slides off, and you can access the motherboard without removing it and put the and upgrade the memory. So what I did is I went to Amazon and I bought what I could find. I looked on Amazon, I looked on eBay, I looked in various locations to see what I could find, and what I found was these, let's see, let's go to recent orders. What I found is these chips here, which were 8 GB DDR3L 1600 SODIMM 16 GB kit, 2 times 8 GB. Now, these were not the recommended ones that are on the Western Digital site from the perspective of name brand. However, all of these numbers on here were the same as what the name brand ones were, except these were half of the price of what the other brand named ones were. And I just took a risk because it was 50% off, and I was able to get them in the next day. As soon as I got them, they're not as large as they look here. They're very small. They're maybe 2 inches long and 1 inch tall. And so I ordered this for $14.89. I think with tax it was like $15. And all of these numbers here, except for the 8 GB, the rest of this DDR3L 1600 SODIMM 16 GB kit, PCL3L DDR3, 1600 megahertz, 1.35 volts. Now understand this 1.35 volts is very important. So I stuck to what it said. Now there were a couple of other technical details about the memory which I wanted to make sure were correct. And this is where I was particularly focused on. Non-EC unbuffered. Okay, I don't really know what that means. I think it just means that it doesn't slow down, doesn't set a speed for on the chip for the product. It just takes all of the speed and uses it. And frankly, when I got it working again, at the difference between 4 gigabytes and 16 gigabytes is a huge difference for the 1489 or 1550 with taxes or whatever. When you're accessing your drive either remotely or directly, the speed is incredibly better and the drive works very much better when you add upgrading the chips. So like when I was troubleshooting, still getting the blinking light, nothing else was working. There is a few things that I did try, and I'm going to go through these with the images I can find online. So the first few things I tried were to pull the drives out, completely pull the drives out, keep them in the order they were in when I pulled them out, so that when I put them back in, they were in the correct order. This blue light blinks when it's not working. It's supposed to mean that it is updating or it's processing information. It could be reorganizing your disk. There's several things it could be. A lot of people are saying online that when it does that, it's basically worthless. There's situations where they're telling them to let it run for 4 or 5 days, 6, 7 days to let it reorganize the disk. I didn't think that would work, so I kept trying different things. One of the things I did was upgrade the memory. And to upgrade the memory, well, let's back up. Some of the other things I did was to try and do a reset. Okay, to reset it, they suggest this little reset here takes a paperclip pin, and you can, with the power on, you can press this pin for 4 seconds with a paperclip, and it's supposed to shut the system down and restart it, and basically reboot the system just like you're rebooting a computer. These two USB ports here are for connecting a USB drive onto the system. There may be some other uses, but it has 1 and 2 here. I think that basically means you can connect up to 2 USB drives. You can access these USB drives through the MyCloud system remotely if you have the settings to allow these are shared. I'm not going to go into that because this video is just for trying to get it restarted from the blinking blue light. Now here you have port 1 and port 2 of your network connections. I also was wondering if maybe just the network was down, so I kept trying different things. I unplugged the network, I went to my router, and was wondering if maybe it was the network settings. Okay, because what I found later is that my router actually did have an update that was installed automatically, and it was dated a few days before, so I suspect maybe it might have impacted the access to my NAS drive. And The other thing to check is to see when Windows, in this case I have Windows 11, what were recent updates that were installed on my system. I'm not going into too much detail about the updates and how to find that. There's instructions online, but in investigating, I found that Windows had an update during this period as well. So I had my router update, Windows update, and I was also wondering if the PR4100 had an update. And maybe in the process of one of those updates, it caused the PR41 to freeze or take longer in updating. Now, again, I'm not an expert in programming. I was just trying to figure out how do you fix this. So I was using the Power 1 connection. I don't even know what the Power 2 is. I suspect that's for backup power, like a UPS device, in case you lose your main power. I don't have a cable for that. I just have the one cable. Many of it come with a second cable. I don't know, but so to reset it, a soft reset is 4 seconds. Pushing this button, it should power off and power back on. Mine was blinking blue. The reset button didn't work. The soft reset didn't work. So I tried following the instructions for a hard reset. Now the hard reset, you are supposed to unplug it, push the reset button in. While you continue to push the reset button in, you plug it back in and power it up. And in that process, you leave this reset button pushed in once the power's back on for 40 seconds, and it should power down and power back up. With the blinking blue light, I did this process, and it did not work. It did not power down. It did nothing. So at that point, I was kind of at a loss. I tried powering it off and on a few times on the front power button just by holding the power button in. It'll power off if you hold the power button in after like 3 or 4 seconds. And then it will stay off. Just like a normal computer, you power it off. And then you have to push the button to start it again. Now, that did not work either. I did that several times. Just kept getting the blue light. Was not connecting to the network. So I went ahead and I bought this memory. I upgraded it. There's directions online, but in a nutshell, what you have to do is you take this one screw on the top and these 2 bottom screws out. This whole case black part slides back off of the unit and then up. So you slide it back about 1 inch and then this whole thing pushes upward and comes off. On one side, I think it's this side here, there is a motherboard that faces outward when you open the box. Now, once you get into the inside of the PR4100, let's see if we can find a motherboard to show you what it looks like. This is a good video, I think. To show you what it looks like.
This just shows you.
Again, you want to do all of this with it powered off.
First, we're gonna.
Sorry, I'm jumping around, but I just want to show you the motherboard. Once all the drives are out,
oh, God, I haven't done this one. You don't need to take that screw out. Long.
You just need to get to the motherboard. So I'm going to go here.
We've taken this whole board out.
Okay, here is your motherboard. Okay, this is getting in the way.
This is the thermal paste on.
This is the motherboard
CPU in this
here.
One. This one you can actually put the PR4100. You can actually put the.
Notice here, this is a battery. Okay, this is
new CPU paste.
A battery that allows the memory to be maintained on the motherboard. So this is standard on most motherboards. Even a computer motherboard has a little watch battery there. Mine was, I think, a 2032 battery. Unfortunately, I had one of these. It's been 5 years since I bought the unit, a little over 5 years. So I don't know what condition this battery was in. I didn't even test it. But I just took the old one off and put a new one in. To take the old one off, there's two little sides here, little clamps that kind of just push back, and then the battery pops out. You just got to be careful you don't break that, because once you break that, it ruins the motherboard. So be real sensitive to taking that battery out and put a new battery in. The writing on the battery goes upward. So replace the battery. I suspect that maybe what was happening was something to do with this battery being dead, and the lack of memory on, or access to the memory that's on the motherboard. Typically, these motherboards have a little bit of memory attached to the motherboard to maintain the programming to start and stop. I think they call it BIOS memory, that starts and stops the computer when you turn it on. And if you can't access that memory, then it will not start. I don't know if that's what was happening, but I replaced this battery. Be real sensitive not to touch any of these circuits, because you can, static can cause damage to them. Although I don't believe in 30 years of fooling with computers I've ever caused static damage to a circuit board. It's possible though, and it can be very sensitive. So you want to make sure that you're not touching this. And the other thing is watch being on carpet. Watch anything wet, not touching this. Make sure that you know, the power is turned off and unplugged. Okay. So if you look close here, you can see this one right here. This is the RAM. Okay. This is the RAM memory that we're upgrading from 2 to 8 gigabyte. You might, for $15, you might as well upgrade to 8. They'll charge you, upwards of $100 to $200 if you went through Western Digital. But you can get the RAM online from Amazon for $15. I just showed you this one right here is a perfect. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but believe me, I switched it out, and the difference in speed and accessing the drive is incredible. It's instantaneous, whereas before you had to wait and there was a delay, especially when you're accessing over the internet. And now it's instantaneous. So, all right, let's go back to the video. So to replace the RAM, there's these two little retaining clips right here and right here. And then on this is the other RAM here. And there's one there, and then there's one on the bottom. You can't really see it there. All you have to do is lightly push this back away from the RAM, okay? And then pull up along this edge very lightly. And that should pull the RAM outward away from the motherboard. And then the RAM slides this way as the finger is pointing out of the pin memory here. This is the slot it's in. On this one, the slot is here, so you're going to pull it away this way, okay, once you unhook the sides here. Now, and then the memory will go in the same way. You can't put it in wrong. You could put it in upside down, so you don't want to force it. But if you look here, there's a little slot here, okay? That slot has this section that goes in one side, and then this longer section goes in the other side. If you're not familiar with computers, that's a fairly common mechanic of the memory and a few other things like hard drive plugs and any other memory card type stuff that's on a hard motherboard. Very easy. Just going to use soft hands. Don't force anything. Be really light, and it will snap into place. And then you want to lock it down with these little clips on the side. But as you push it down in, it automatically locks into place. It's like a clicking. Once that goes in, it clicks in. As long as you're soft touch, you shouldn't have any problem. Okay.
Did it anyways. All right.
I never took out the motherboard. I didn't really need to. There's 4 screws that hold it in, and you have to have the whole box open in order to do it. I didn't find that necessary. But one thing I did do that I was afraid that might be causing this problem was to clean out around the motherboard. Let's see if I can get a decent image. What I found is that, you know, number one, you're going to get a lot of dust inside of these units depending on where you're located. Those fans draw the dust in, and it's the dust gets on everything. You want to, you know, lightly blow off the motherboard, the fan. Cleanliness is important on these things because there's a lot that can go wrong from dust particles. But what I found over the years on different electronic devices, besides dust, what is one of the biggest enemies of electronics is spiders. And it sounds funny, but spider webs, I learned this, you know, the hard way multiple times. Spider webs can be electrically conductive. So what happens is when the spider, you know, makes his web between two pieces of metal, that can short circuit electrical board, any kind of electrical system, any kind of switch can be short circuited by spider webs. So one of the things that I look for is insects inside the board, and spiders tend to be very common because there's heat produced inside these units, and it's protective. They can get in through a little, you know, crack, a little hole somewhere, the fan motor area, the vent, wherever they can get through, and then they get in and they make a home, and they put their web in there, and sure enough, you know, things get shorted out. It's like putting a wire in between two pieces of metal somewhere, and it shorts stuff out. So while I had it open, I inspected it, and sure enough, there was at least 2 spiders inside of my unit, and there was enough webbing that there could have been, you know, some type of short going on. I don't know for sure, but what you want to do is you want to get all of that out. You want to blow it out. That's why they have those little dust cans. You know, sometimes just blowing on it with your mouth is good enough. You want to get as much out of there dust-wise as you can. And, you know, you don't really want to feel too much around electronics, but as long as it's unplugged, you know, try and empty out whatever dirt that's inside there while you got it open. A dust can is the best option because you're not touching anything, and the blast typically will deal with it. Get it blown off, get all the dust out, all the webbing out, the spider webs out, get the spiders out, everything out, okay? You want to get it clean as possible. All right. Once I did that, I put it all back together again. You know, be it I had taken it apart several times to inspect it, found the battery issue. I replaced the memory cards, and then finally to clean it. So once I put it all back together, I had my PR4100. It's 5 or 6 years old, and still in very good shape. You know, looks brand new almost. And I was looking for software online, updates, whatever. So once I put it back together, then I replugged in my PR4100, had the power come up. This time, the final time, there was a red light here. So I was like, oh, that's weird. That's different. Okay, red light. So it had been blinking blue here, this power light here. I even tried, you know, hitting these buttons, holding them in. Sometimes the power would shut off when I held this in or held this together. some of these manufacturers have it programmed so that if you hold a certain series of buttons, it goes through some type of reset. I don't know if this has it or not, but I tried that, taking a risk that it would damage it, but typically that's not going to damage it. I even tried starting it without emptying all the drives. People suggested try taking the drives out, restarting it. You just have to hold this button down for, I don't know, 5 seconds and it will shut off. And then you can just turn it back on, by holding the button in. Now I'm told you can take the drives out when the power is on, which is called a hot swap. I didn't do that. I tried that one-on-one just to see if it would trigger something in the memory, but you can possibly damage your disk if you hot swap and it's not supposed to do that. And even sometimes I think you can hot swap something and cause damage. So typically you want to have the power off to the drives when you take the drives out. That's what I would recommend. There's more detailed instructions on what you can and cannot do with the PR4100 on their website. So again, I put it back together. It looks like this. Turn the power on. This originally these would blink for a few seconds and then they would go solid. Now this time, after doing that, I turned it on and there was a red light here. So I found that weird, but I don't think I at that point had the network plugged into it, the network cable. So I went back and I checked. I found sometimes you have a loose network cable connection somewhere. That's always possible. And I did find one of my network cables was loose at a point, but if you have web access to the switch or whatever it is that's connecting the network to here, that shouldn't be an issue. You want to check the cable from here to your switch because you want to get an IP address. It has to have a good connection to the network to get an IP address. If it doesn't have a good connection to the network through the Cat5, I think it's called Cat5 cable, or I think now they have Cat6, then you're not going to be able to get access to this no matter what, because it doesn't have Wi-Fi. It doesn't make a Wi-Fi connection, so it has to have a wire connection from the connector in the back from this location. Let's see, from one of these two plugs here, it has to have a good cable going from here to your network. And sometimes the cables go bad too, so you might want to try a different cable too to see if that's the issue or not. So I fooled around with the cables. That was a possible problem, not making a good connection. Then I also went to Windows. You go in here to network connections, and mine came up. This Ethernet 2 is my computer connection to the network. When it's operating like this, you can see that there is a signal being sent and received from the network. It says there is internet, and it tells you the speed, how long the connection's been up. So you want to make sure that you have the computer you're on has internet service and a network connection. If that's working, you can go back to here. You want to check all your settings that you have all the right settings here. Again, this is your network card that's in your computer that it connects to, and you want to make sure that under the Ethernet connection that you have access to a public network. Let's see if I can remember where This is located on here. There is somewhere on the Windows 11 where it is public versus private network connection. Here's a Reddit on it. Here's some YouTube videos on it. Let's see if this has anything.
Welcome to the Windows Computer and Technology channel, and you will see network and internet, and here click your Wi-Fi connection. Here you will see, of course, they're connected to Wi-Fi, but you will see on the second line your connection, where you are and should be connected. Recommended are private, which is...
All right, this is the page, network and internet. You don't necessarily need to be Wi-Fi. You want it to be your for all your network. You can try different settings here. I made mine public. I switch it back to public. First I switch it private, then I switch it back to public. Because it says for home network,
different setting,
you want
and
it to
I'll
be
explain why you might want to be on one or the other. I am on private, and I'll explain you why.
I'll listen to this for a second, see what he says.
Is, yes, recommended. For most people, probably the best setting. But it has one thing that it does to keep you safe is lock down the network capabilities of Windows. So in Windows 11, if you're on public, and the chances are you are, because by default going to a new version of Windows, Microsoft usually puts the slider to public. That means that your computers are not discoverable on a network, for example. So if you have only one PC and you go to public Wi-Fi's with it and so on, it's fine. Public is where you should be. And like I said, if you have only one computer and nothing else, public is definitely where you want to be on this setting. That means anywhere you go, anywhere you connect, your PC is hard to discover because it's kind of locked down on the network. Private opens up the network. Private means that you are connected to some connection that you know is going to be fine and secure for you. You will usually use private when you're at home, because at home you usually can control and know what computers are connected to your network, your home network. Why would you be private at home? If you have more than one PC and want to share files between PCs, want to share devices. So you might have some smart devices at home that need to be connected to your computer.
All right, so I'm going to pause this video. You can go and watch the whole video at this location on YouTube. I think I switched it to private to test it out, and then I switched it back to public, and wasn't sure. One of these settings may have been the culprit for why my computer was not identifying, or my network was not identifying the PR4100. It could have been a cable. It could have been a spider web inside. You want to try all of these things to troubleshoot what the cause is, because there can be multiple causes. There could be one cause, there could be multiple causes. And in the process of this, I also noticed that Windows had an update in the last few days. So you want to look and see what Windows, the history of your Windows update was, to see if there was an update. And I didn't make any changes to the settings from the update, but sometimes those types of things can be quirky, and maybe something got changed, like one of these settings. I believe what happened, I switched to here, and then I went back to public, the public setting, and I think I even checked the firewall and security settings, because those can impact whether your PC identifies a network drive. Now, the funny thing is that all of my other network devices were showing up. I've got all kinds of Alexa and outlets and plugs and switches and Wi-Fi. I've got in my house, I got water monitors for my house to see if there's a leak in the house. I've got electricity monitors on my house. We have a pretty thorough smart home around the house. We've got a dishwasher that is Wi-Fi, and all of these devices were showing up. The only thing that was not showing up was the PR4100. So, you know, something to do with the blinking blue light is that there's no network. And when I got the red light after doing all of the trial and error options, when I plugged it back into the network, and I made some of these switches from private to public, and did these types of things. The funny thing is that in my file manager, okay, let's see if we can go here and find the file manager.